r/askreddit. What do you regret finding out?
My father never wanted me, or children at all, and actually told my mother that if she had me, he'd spend his life making both of us miserable. She was convinced that once he saw me, he'd change his mind. She was very, very wrong. My dad often says how much happier he would have been if he and my mother never had children. I feel your pain. I'm sorry, it sucks.
That my mom knew my stepfather was abusing me and did nothing. Dude, I'm really sorry for that, and I kind of feel it. My biological dad did the same when I was 4 years old, till I was 4 years old, till I was 5. But once my mom found that out that same night, she punched him, literally in the face, and then we took the car to get the crap out ourselves from there. For me, she is my hero, and I really hate the fact that not everybody have had the same luck as me.
I always blamed my best friend's erratic behavior on mental health issues until one day I found her passed out on my toilet and realized that her behavior always got erratic after bathroom visits. Unfortunately, she may have mental health issues, but an addiction to certain drugs was the reason for most of her behavior. There was one girl in our friend group with the hyper/crazy/fun mom, and when we were about 18, one other girl went so. Mimi's mom was on cocaine the entire time, right? And the rest of us were like,
Well, if I had a manager at one of my first jobs as a teenager that I loved. He was always energetic and fun to be around. After I left, though, he seemed to disappear. I went in one day and asked about him, and the employee said, "Oh, you mean the coked-up guy?" Blew my innocent teenage mind.
When I was around 10 years old, I was sitting on the couch, and my older sister came towards me with a knife and stabbed a hole in the cushion about a foot from my leg. She pulled the knife out and immediately told me not to tell Dad. I was young and naive, and my sister had kind of twisted sense of humor, so I really didn't know what to think. It definitely did some damage now that I look back on it. Years later, my sister announced that she had planned to attack me with the knife, but chickened out at the last moment. At this point, I had all but moved on from the incident, but this brought it all back and then some.
What the hell? May I ask how old your sister was at the time?
She was in her mid-teens at the time. I honestly don't remember what year it was, but we are 5 years apart in age.
My ex said not to worry about a guy when we were together, and she ended up marrying him after 5 years.
My dad mentioning how tight my mother is. Thanks, Dad.
Power move by Dad.
Finding out my ex had slept with my uncle and 3 of my friends.
Friends.
Uncle.
That my ex sabotaged a condom to try and stop me from joining the military.
This is how you get stuck alone with a baby.
How good it feels to be high on opiates.
I had some very severe throat and sinus surgery a few years ago, and the doctor gave me a massive amount of Dilaudid. While I have no recollection of the first week post-surgery, my mother said that one of the first things I said, as soon as I was physically able to speak again, was "Damn, now I see why people get addicted to heroin coups. This is really nice."
My appendix ruptured a few months back and they gave me Dilaudid in the hospital. I think my first words after they pushed down the plunger were, "Oh, so that's why people don't stop doing that."
My brother's girlfriend's not safe for work Reddit account. It's supposed to be a couple's account, so you might guess the horrors I saw in there.
I regret just finding out that my brother found out about my girlfriend's not safe for work account.
Nice try. Almost gave me a heart attack, so top marks anyway.
I need a 101% on my chem final to get an A.
Better than I need a 101% on my chem final to get AED.
That my dad abused my sister. This comment is kind of maybe blowing up, so I wanted to clarify something. I wasn't the one that found out. My sister confronted him, one of the bravest things I know of, and legal proceedings began. One night my mom got all of us together and told us.
I remember finding out my uncle would smack my cousin around the head when they were alone to toughen him up. Would smack him harder if he cried and promised worse if he cried to my aunt about it. My aunt didn't find out about it until my cousin was 20, one of his current girlfriends spilled the bean. Apparently, it happened his whole childhood until he bulked up in high school during wrestling and hit him back. The uncle also cheated on my aunt for 2 years, and everyone in my family just acts like all of it never happened.
That I'm not very smart. I'm not dumb or dim, but I've really had to come to terms with the fact that not only am I not the smartest man in the room, I'm probably damn near the stupidest.
learning from my sister that my father told her that my mom's mom was not paralyzed from the waist down because she fell off a fence. It is that she was beaten so badly by the man she was seeing at the time.
Shit, there are some nasty pieces of crap in this world.
What my sister and her boyfriend were doing in the bubble bath.
I bet those sick fucks were holding hands.
You know who has hands? The devil. And he uses them for holding...
When I was about 14, my mum took me to a tattoo shop to get her nipples pierced. While the procedure was happening, she turned to me and said, "Your dad bites harder than that." I could have lived without that info.
Dude, you were already down the fucked up rabbit hole. That was just the cherry on top.
The details of my parents' divorce. Thanks, Mum.
Same boat. My mother used to rant all day about how awful my father was. Everything she told me was a lie.
I got both sides lying for all my life. They divorced at 2, now I'm 19. So I've no idea what actually happened and what did it.
I didn't meet my dad until I was 15. It was in secret since my mother wanted nothing to do with him. Within the first 3 sentences exchanged, he felt the need to tell me that I was conceived on a beach in July during the last time they had sex. I was the product of going, a way-off in a relationship doomed before my conception. He followed it up with, "We were good at 2 things, me and your mom, fighting and fucking. Unfortunately, we were fighting more than we were effing, so it stopped being worth it." 10 years later, and this is still how I get my family history.
How many cockroaches there are in Australia. The one that climbed my foot as I sat in the evening gaming freaked me out.
That my dad is not my biological dad.
That might be a real benefit to you down the road, medical history-wise.
I found out my dad wasn't my real dad when I was young. Unfortunately, I have no idea who my biological father is. I don't really care, and I'm not interested in finding him, but the medical history stuff does bother me a bit. For all I know, his side of the family could all have Alzheimer's, for example. Is it possible to get a DNA test to determine things like this, such as what diseases you might be more prone to, etc.? I'm not sure how trustworthy things like 23andMe are, so maybe if I ask a doctor about it. If anyone has any insight, I'd be all ears.
My mother died in a car accident when I was 3. I found out from a newspaper article years later that it was her fault. She wasn't paying attention and crossed the yellow line and ended both her life and that of the person in the other car.
Same happened to me, although it wasn't my mom. It was my grandpa. He died in 1955, and neither my dad or I ever knew the circumstances. Found out from old newspaper articles that he was drinking and driving. Although it wasn't illegal then or looked down upon as much, I hate this feeling of disappointment, and I wish my dad hasn't found out either.
That I was the asshole in my relationships. Turns out I've become the person I was afraid of becoming my entire life, my dad. A jealous dude with anger management issues who never sees his own faults. To be fair, though, I've come a long way since my best friend straight up told me what I've become, and that if I stayed that way, she was going to stop being friends with me. I guess I don't regret finding out because it helped me get my crap together. However, the fact that you were the asshole and you were the reason some of your friends cut ties with you is a pretty hard pill to swallow, especially knowing that you'll never get to make it up to some of them because it's been years. Why should they care at this point?
I feel you on this one, but I bet it's somehow satisfying to belong to the tiny population that self-reflects about the way they behave towards others and themselves.
How horrible the procedure for taking out your wisdom teeth is. I have to take them all out, so 2 weeks ago I went to the dentist in Europe. Here they don't use laughing gas but just a local anesthesia. I thought that they would take a scalpel and cut away till my tooth came out, and then sew it up. Little did I know that they used almost a screwdriver to bend it out, and afterwards a plier to bend it out even further. The dentist just leaned in my mouth with what seemed the strength of a million suns and cracked out my tooth while I was lying on the bench, sweating profusely out of fear. I still have to take out 2 more on my left side.
Don't go to a dentist. Go to an oral surgeon. Same anesthesia, infinitely better technique. It's more expensive, though.
What the Mr. Hands video is.
What is it?
Dude getting fucked by a horse.
You could wake up mid-surgery. Or amnesia awareness where you feel all the pain from a surgery, but you're asleep, and a surgery goes on for hours.
Usually, your heart rate will rise significantly, so they will more than likely know that this is happening to you and will stop. At least, this is what I've heard. I could be wrong. Hopefully I'm not. Oh.
Also, we use biz monitoring. It's like an EEG, and we can see how sedated you are underneath by watching brainwaves, and there's a normal range we look for.
I regret finding out that a priest I used to admire was a pedophile and has since been defrocked.
He needs to be decocked.
That my mother knew she had cancer a year before she told anyone, or rather a year before she was diagnosed after I literally forced her to see a doctor for her then extremely distended stomach. I was under the impression that we told each other absolutely everything because up until that point, we did. I found out the truth a month after she died when I'd requested all of her cancer-related paperwork from her oncologist.